Let me tell you something straight, and I want you to hear this with your whole spirit. There comes a moment in every life when things don't look like progress, they look like problems. Things feel heavier, nights feel longer, questions start getting louder. And if you're not careful, you'll call that season a setback. But I'm here to tell you, sometimes the storm isn't there to destroy you. It's there to introduce you to who you're becoming. When the old version of you can't survive the next level, life has a way of shaking things up to make room for growth. And that shaking, that discomfort, that quiet frustration you've been feeling, it might not be a sign that something is going wrong. It might be a sign that something is finally going right. See, the best stages of your life don't start with applause. They start with pressure. They start when you're tired of explaining yourself, tired of shrinking, tired of settling for what you know deep down is beneath you. They start when you stop needing validation from people who don't understand your journey. When your circle gets smaller, your focus gets sharper. When distractions fall away, purpose steps forward. And you may not realize it yet, but the confusion you're facing is often clarity in disguise, teaching you what no longer belongs in your future. Blend. You don't step into your best chapter feeling confident every day. You step into it feeling called to rise earlier, called to think differently, called to walk away from habits, places, and mindsets that once felt comfortable. And that call can be lonely. But loneliness isn't punishment, it's preparation. It's life pulling you aside and saying, pay attention now, because what's coming next requires a stronger version of you. So if you feel like you're being stretched, tested, and refined, don't resist it. Stand tall in it, because some of the clearest signs that you are about to begin the best stage of your life are the very moments that once made you doubt yourself. There is a moment in life when familiar patterns start to collapse, when routines that once gave comfort suddenly feel empty, and paths that once felt safe begin to feel limiting. Most people panic in this phase because the human mind is wired to seek stability, not transformation. When things start breaking, when plans fall apart, when what used to work no longer works, the immediate assumption is that something has gone wrong. But often, this is not destruction, it is alignment. Life has a way of removing what no longer fits the person you are becoming. Old habits, outdated beliefs, limiting environments, and even certain relationships begin to feel heavy because they cannot travel with you into the next stage. The discomfort is not random, it is intentional, and it carries meaning if you are willing to see it clearly. Breaking old patterns is rarely gentle. It feels like resistance, confusion, and internal conflict. You may question your decisions, your worth, and your direction. You may feel stuck between who you were and who you are trying to become. This in-between stage is uncomfortable because it strips away identity. The old version of you had rules, expectations, and familiar reactions. When those begin to dissolve, the mind feels exposed. But this exposure, without the collapse of old patterns, there is no space for new strength, new vision, or new purpose to form. Comfort keeps potential asleep, while disruption wakes it up. Life does not elevate you while you cling tightly to what feels safe. Growth demands change, and change demands release. That release can look like losing interest in things you once chased, outgrowing conversations that once excited you, or feeling restless even when everything appears fine on the surface. These are not signs of failure. They are signals that your internal world is evolving faster than your external circumstances. When your values shift, your environment must eventually shift too. The tension you feel is the gap between the two, and that gap is where transformation takes place. Men's people often mistake this phase as falling behind, but in reality, it is a recalibration. Life is redirecting your energy towards something more aligned, more meaningful, and more demanding of your true capability. Old patterns were built for an older version of you, one that did not yet know its strength. As awareness grows, those patterns become too small. They crack under pressure because they were never meant to support the next level. What feels like loss is often release. What feels like confusion is often clarity forming beneath the surface. Lands. If you are experiencing disruption, resistance, or a strong urge to change direction, it may be because life is preparing you for a higher standard. The breaking is not meant to weaken you, but to rebuild you with intention, depth, and purpose. Every meaningful transformation begins with the courage to let the old fall apart so the new can rise. Discomfort has a way of exposing what comfort hides. When life becomes challenging, when pressure starts pressing in from all sides, the natural reaction is to assume something has gone wrong. People are taught to chase ease, to avoid strain, and to believe that struggle means failure. But growth has never followed the path of least resistance. Every meaningful expansion of character, skill, and purpose has always been shaped under pressure. Discomfort is not an enemy. It is a signal that you are being stretched beyond familiar limits, and stretching is the only way strength is built. Pressure forces awareness. When things are easy, habits run on autopilot, and potential remains untouched. When things become difficult, you are forced to pay attention. You begin to examine your choices, your discipline, and your mindset. You notice weaknesses that comfort allowed you to ignore. That awareness can feel overwhelming, but it is also empowering because it reveals where growth is possible. Pressure does not create weakness, it reveals it. And once revealed, weakness can be transformed into strength through effort and consistency. There is a reason why the most significant breakthroughs often follow seasons of struggle. Pressure strips away excuses and exposes priorities. It forces decisions that were once postponed. Under pressure, you learn what truly matters and what was simply noise. You learn how to stand firm when reassurance is absent. You learn how to trust yourself when outcomes are uncertain. These lessons cannot be learned in ease. They require friction, resistance, and moments of doubt that demand inner resolve. Growth through discomfort also reshapes identity. When you endure pressure and keep moving forward, even slowly, your self-image changes. You stop seeing yourself as someone who avoids hardship and start seeing yourself as someone who can endure it. That shift is powerful. Confidence does not come from things going well. It comes from knowing you can handle things when they do not. Each uncomfortable experience that you survive adds depth to your character. Many people quit at this stage because they misinterpret the signs. They believe discomfort means they are off track, when in reality, it often means they are exactly where they need to be. Path to anything meaningful to merit. The mind may resist, the body may feel tired, and emotions may fluctuate, but those reactions are not warnings to stop. They are confirmations that growth is taking place beneath the surface. Pressure refines focus. It teaches discipline, patience, and humility. It forces you to grow into the responsibilities you once wished for. Without pressure, potential remains theoretical. With pressure, if you are feeling challenged, stretched, and tested, it may not be because you are failing. It may be because you are being prepared for a level of life that requires more strength than you currently recognize within yourself. There comes a time when certain people, places, and paths quietly begin to exit your life, sometimes without explanation, and sometimes through moments that feel painful or confusing. At first, this loss can feel personal, as if you have done something wrong or failed in some way. But not every ending is a punishment. Some endings are necessary acts of alignment. As you grow, your direction shifts, and what once fit naturally may no longer match the pace, values, or purpose of you. Losing connections or opportunities can be one of the clearest signs that life is creating space for something more aligned with who you are becoming. And attentions often form during earlier stages of life, when awareness is limited by circumstance, fear, or survival. People bond over shared comfort, shared struggle, or shared habits, not always shared vision. When your perspective expands, those bonds can begin to feel restrictive rather than supportive. This does not mean the past was wrong or meaningless. It means it served its purpose. Growth requires evolution, and evolution requires release. Holding on to what no longer fits creates internal conflict that slows progress and drains energy needed for the next chapter. The absence that follows loss is uncomfortable because emptiness feels uncertain. The mind rushes to fill gaps quickly, sometimes by returning to familiar patterns or relationships that no longer serve growth. But space is not a void, it is a preparation ground. When something leaves your life, it creates room for new lessons, new connections, and new opportunities to enter. That space allows reflection, clarity, and recalibration. Without it, the noise of the past drowns out the direction of the future. Letting go also strengthens self-trust. When you release people or paths that once defined you, you are forced to rely more heavily on your inner compass. You begin making decisions based on values rather than validation. This shift can feel lonely, but it builds independence and confidence. You learn that your worth is not dependent on being needed, approved of, or understood by everyone. You become more intentional with your time and energy, choosing alignment over attachment. Loss refines purpose by narrowing focus. When distractions fall away, priorities become clearer. You see which goals truly matter and which ones were inherited from external expectations. This clarity allows you to move forward with conviction rather than hesitation. What once felt like rejection begins to look like redirection. What once felt like abandonment begins to feel like protection. If you are experiencing separation, whether from people, routines, or dreams you once held, it may not be because life is taking something away from you. It may be because life is clearing the path ahead, removing obstacles you could not yet see, and making room for connections and opportunities that align more deeply with the person you are becoming. There is a noticeable shift that happens when the constant noise of the outside world begins to lose its grip on you. Opinions that once carried weight start to feel distant. Expectations that once dictated your choices begin to fade. This change does not happen suddenly or loudly. It arrives quietly, often after disappointment, exhaustion, or repeated moments of disillusionment. When external validation no longer satisfies you, an inner voice begins to rise. That voice does not shout, but it speaks with consistency and truth, guiding you toward what actually matters rather than what merely looks good to others. Baned. Inner clarity develops when distractions fall away. Life has a way of overwhelming people with endless input, comparisons, and demands, pulling attention out until purpose becomes blurred. When that noise begins to fade, it can feel unsettling at first. Silence exposes thoughts, doubts, and unresolved questions that were once drowned out. Yet, within that silence lies understanding. You begin to recognize patterns in your behavior, motives behind your decisions, and the difference between what you want and what you were taught to want. This awareness is not always comfortable, but it is honest, and honesty is the foundation of clarity. As inner clarity grows, decision-making changes. You stop reacting and start choosing. Instead of seeking approval, you measure choices against your values. This shift brings a sense of calm, even in uncertainty, because your direction is no longer dependent on constant reassurance. You learn to trust your judgment, even when it goes against popular opinion. That trust is built through reflection and consistency, not impulse. The more you listen inwardly, the less you are shaken by external chaos. This clarity also reveals boundaries. When you understand yourself more deeply, you become more selective with your time, energy, and you recognize which situations drain you and which ones strengthen you. You no longer feel obligated to explain every choice or justify every boundary. This is not indifference, it is maturity. It is the understanding that peace is not found in pleasing everyone, but in living in alignment with what feels true and purposeful. The fading of external noise does not mean disengaging from the world. It means engaging with it intentionally. You still listen, learn, and adapt, but you are no longer controlled by every opinion or trend. You move with discernment rather than reaction. This creates stability in a world that is constantly shifting. When challenges arise, you face them with a grounded sense of self rather than scattered anxiety. If you are noticing that you crave less approval, question old assumptions, and feel more guided by an internal sense of direction, it is a sign that clarity is forming. That clarity is not an endpoint, it is a compass, and it often appears just before life begins to open in ways that require confidence, self-awareness, and trust in you. There is a powerful shift that takes place when discipline begins to replace fear in your daily life. Fear is rooted in hesitation, in imagining outcomes before taking action, in waiting for certainty that never fully arrives. Discipline, on the other hand, is grounded in movement. It does not wait for perfect conditions or complete confidence. It operates through commitment, showing up even when motivation is low and doubt is present. When discipline becomes stronger than fear, progress becomes inevitable because action no longer depends on emotion. It happens quietly. You may not feel suddenly brave or inspired, but you notice yourself doing what needs to be done, regardless of how you feel. Small, consistent actions start to define your days. You begin to value structure over impulse and responsibility over comfort. This is not rigidity, it is self-respect. Discipline is the decision to honor your goals, even when distractions tempt you away. Each discipline choice weakens fear because it proves that fear does not have authority over your behavior. Many faith plays a crucial role in this shift. Faith is not blind optimism. It is trust built through experience. It grows each time you act despite uncertainty and see yourself survive the outcome. When you step forward without guarantees and realize you are still standing, belief strengthens. Over time, this belief replaces hesitation. You stop asking whether you are capable and start focusing on what is required. Faith becomes the bridge between where you are and where you are trying to go. Man's discipline and faith take root. Your identity changes. You no longer see yourself as someone who waits for the right moment. You become someone who creates momentum. Fear loses its grip because it thrives on inaction. The more you move, the less power it holds. This does not mean fear disappears completely. It means fear is no longer in control. It becomes a signal rather than a stop sign, something acknowledged but not obeyed. This stage also brings emotional stability. When your actions are guided by discipline rather than mood, you experience less internal conflict. You stop negotiating with yourself. Decisions become simpler because they are aligned with long-term vision rather than short-term comfort. This consistency builds confidence, not the loud kind, but a quiet assurance that you can rely on yourself. Lon, if you are finding it easier to commit, easier to endure discomfort, and easier to trust the process even when results are delayed, it is a sign that fear is losing its dominance. Discipline and faith are taking its place, shaping a mindset capable of sustaining growth, responsibility, and purpose as you step into a higher level of life readiness.